Well, hey pirates, welcome back to the Creator Capitalist podcast. Our guest today is someone who has taken the road less traveled before he even knew that was a thing. Instead of racking up hundreds of thousands in medical school debt, he made a different decision and he chose the Uniformed Services University, where the military paid for everything, including a salary while he was in school, which is very smart. He came out the other side with an MD from USU and an MPH in epidemiology with a genetics concentration from Johns Hopkins. He spent 17 years as an Air Force physician and senior flight surgeon, dual board certified in aerospace and preventative medicine. With 750 hours and 36 aircraft, including a short course training on the T-37 and T-38 jet trainers, which I'm jealous of. His call sign was Jeans, which, as you'll hear, was not an accident. He noticed something that bothered him. Military personnel were coming in with upper respiratory infections, and there was no reliable way to tell if they were bacterial or viral. The tools just could not do it. So he went to Hopkins to help solve that. That eventually led him to a 1-month, $15 million DARPA-funded bioterrorism surveillance project in Washington, D.C., right after the anthrax attacks. He went on to become the Division Chief of Science and Technology and Air Force Chair of the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, a $1.27 billion program in fiscal year 26. Since then, he has founded 5 companies, including MilMed Connect, a Techstars portfolio company dedicated to training military medical veterans to work with industry. He has helped capture over $300 million in non-dilutive DoD and federal funding for medtech, biopharma, digital health, and medical countermeasure companies. He has 5 books, 25 articles, and 9 patents to his name, and serves as an affiliate associate professor at OHSU and as a USU military medical ambassador. So please welcome Dr. Eric Hansen. You have quite the resume, my sir. Did I miss anything, forget anything, get anything wrong?
No, thank you for that kind introduction. I appreciate it.
We want to know when you're going to stop being lazy and actually do something with your life, Eric.
Yeah, come on.
It's been fun.
It's been fun indeed. Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, your resume reads like a Jack Ryan story and the like and stuff, which is pretty awesome on that. Although I don't think a medical military version has been done of those series. Have there? I don't think so.
This is true. I don't know.
Harrison's Ford, we'll have to find somebody younger to play you in, obviously, but all that great stuff is outstanding. So, I mean, Dr. Eric, like you've got so many things. Like I've been trying to figure out what category of person you are at some level. So we know you're a physician. Mm-hmm. You're a military. Are you technically a veteran now? Are you still serving?
Yes, veteran.
Veteran. Okay. You're a military vet and an entrepreneur, right? So you've done that in the arena, and also, I think you're doing some consulting advising for other entrepreneurs. Is that right? So there's kind of 4
Correct.
Different things that I think you're working on, as well as being a professor. That's 5 things. And so, yeah, Eric, come on, stop slacking on that part. And then, how would you describe if there is a primary thing you do, like what is the main thing that you do day to day that you're the most excited about of the many things that you have done and the many things that you can't do? What's kind of top of mind for you?
Yeah, primary, thing that gets me excited is translating dual use technology into military medicine and operational settings. And when I mean dual use, it's technologies that can be utilized in both civilian and military use cases, also called dual purpose, and helping to accelerate those technologies forward to our warfighters and medics and medical personnel is fulfilling. It's something that's been built off that Air Force and then business of medicine progression.
So dual purpose, I mean, the obvious things I think about military and civilian applications would be the internet of the many, many things. And, my old friends at iRobot, that started out as a military application as well, I believe, is, robots kind of searching for bombs and kind of diffusing that and then became the Roomba and the like. But do you have kind of specific things that you're kind of like, so I imagine, DARPA has many, many things that they're working on as this DoD, as in your world that hopefully some of which you can tell us without having to harm us and the like. But Are there specific areas of dual purpose tech that you're particularly honed in on? I mean, the respiratory disease one, it seems like one, but I don't know if there's others that you're kind of niche down on.
Yeah, our primary customers are from the life science industry, and so med tech, which can be devices, biotech, pharma, digital health, and also medical countermeasures, which is kind of unique. It's treatments for chemical, biological, radiologic, and nuclear threats, and so we help some companies build those um, additional sectors or market cap areas that they might not have thought about.
So I'm just going to go where you lead us with this because I don't know anything about anything with this stuff. But like medical countermeasures sounds exciting and scary all at the same time. I mean, the closest thing that I can think of is I think some of the latest Teslas have the biotech mode, where if there is a bioterrorism act that the HEPA filters actually, I don't know how many nines that they get to, but like when I think about medical countermeasures, like I can imagine kind of scary movie like things. But tell me about how I don't want to think about nuclear right now, but like a biotech
Yeah.
type of thing. How like I mean, are you talking about things like COVID or things that are kind of airborne or the like and stuff? Like what are we talking about here that are
Yeah.
dual purpose?
So specifically for medical countermeasures actually MilMed Connect really, was expanded in, secondary to the COVID response, because so many companies with medical countermeasure, antiviral, respiratory, other technologies wanted to get into the fight. They wanted to help. And so we typically work with 5 clients at a time. We really focus in on their needs. But overnight we had, 16 to 20. And how do you help them and scale to help them? So that drove a lot of our thoughts of how do we build tools to expand and scale this. But, how do we help these companies that are building technologies that can be applied for chemical, biological, radiologic, nuclear, as well as everyday medicine? And
so wait, let me just ask a question here. When you say clients, are you talking about other Dr. Erics, like folks who have served in the military and have a medical background and are entrepreneurs, like, or are you talking about other kinds of like help us? You don't have to name names, but like give us an example of what a typical client of yours might look like.
Yeah, when we're searching uh, for a CEO, we're looking. It's really is industry as our primary client, and we're looking
So
for
not necessarily a military vet per se.
Well, that's an area that we've trained military medical veterans to work with industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we couple those together, and then we provide tools for them, to work with industry is our goal. But right now it's working with industry and working with CEOs who are very interested in building dual use technologies. They want to take their civilian technologies. They need guidance assistance to help to innovate those dual use technologies for applicability in military medicine, operational settings, VA, international settings, and foreign military services. So opening their market caps, and they're open to, expanding the product pipeline or building out additional product.
So do you mean like um, these are companies that are generally commercial, non-military, and they're trying to open up a military vertical? Is that what you're describing? Is
Yes,
the majority of the companies that you work with and whatnot?
So I'll give you an example in the pharma area, and so just a brilliant CEO, scientist, and business person. She, is working on a host targeted antiviral, meaning it works within the human to help fight off viruses. And there's, 1,000 plus viruses that are always causing different ailments for us. And so working in the human and being able to broad spectrumly treat viruses, she's working on things that are very applicable to the civilian market. So big market cap, but also has some preliminary data that it could be used for terror threats, bioterror threats like filoviruses, Marburg virus, Crimean Congo. And so, I said, let's look at that and let's find some funding for that. So we found an initial, small tactical, initial starting point of funding. And then we translated that into a much larger strategic which was about 11 million to start, 24 million, 36 million, up to 50 million now, to help her expand that development. So the civilian pipeline is the primary, but alongside of that in parallel is this dual use. And so she's raised about 15 million private and about 60 million non-dilutive. So it's a great way to build your company fast.
Okay, so then in this regard, again, you don't have to share what you aren't able to share, but sounds like a private company, and on its way up. It's not a big behemoth just yet, right? So kind of a private company scaling, has a civilian business, and then somewhere along the way they discover that, or they realize, oh, there's probably a military application to this, right? And just so I understand it, the fundraising that you do in the private markets, we all get that. The money that you raise that's non-dilutive. So if I double click that, because this is an area that we've talked about a bit, which is pretty interesting, is that means that it's not equity in exchange for capital. It's not debt per se. It's like a grant. How about us think through? It's a military grant to go develop this civilian tech into a military use case type of a situation.
Correct. Yeah. So it's not diluted.
How does that show up on the cap table even? Like it's just a cash infusion? Like I don't even know how you would account for that.
Really, it's kind of a strategic capital. It's something that is not like this one CEO. It's just help build out their team to expand the product pipeline, in a way that they just didn't see, before, the opportunity. And then they had an idea, but they needed a path forward to implement and innovate their technologies for these dual use. And that's what we help with, is that roadmap in many ways.
So and then I'm going to keep throwing out situations so I can understand and test this. Is like the I had a client in the hearing aid space, and it was kind of ultra small hearing aids. Hearing aids normally 6,000-7,000. This was in the 2,000-3,000 range, if not a little cheaper. And so the problem that they were solving for, Dr. Eric, was like men. The average time, men are the 2/3 of hearing aid clients, right? Some women get them, but mostly men. The time elapsed, and you can appreciate this as a physician, from the moment where I think I might have a hearing problem to I do something about it, about 7 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a real problem. And so part of their real growth story was identifying a federal superconsumer, in which case some of it was military, for sure, but mostly kind of FBI, Secret Service, anybody who had done firearm training of some sort. Because what they realized was that, if you do firearm training, you know better than I, if you shoot right-handed, you're going to have a little more hearing aid damage on that ear with it, right?
Opposite ear, yeah. With the end of the rifle barrel. Yep.
See, this is why you're you and I'm me. Okay, perfect. So the opposite ear, you're going to have some hearing aid damage, right? And what the two kind of marketing hacks that they found was that one was that was a truth that you could easily market to that was not as emotionally damaging, as a man saying, oh, I'm getting no money. It's like, no. I served my country. And this is kind of, yes, in the course of serving my country, I'm going to naturally have some hearing loss in the opposite ear. So it wasn't my masculinity was being challenged kind of a thing, right? Two was that federal healthcare, is my understanding, is that hearing aids were largely covered in its entirety. Whereas that's not always the case with, kind of commercial healthcare and the like. So it was basically like, I have an excuse to get it that doesn't make me feel bad about myself, and it's free. And their business just shot up the roof. Now, they did not adapt the hearing aid to be different, right? So like on the spectrum of clients that you serve, like how much of it is like more like what I suspect is the former that you were describing is like, they have a commercial business and there's some work to be done to adapt it for a military use case, versus my hearing aid client was like, it was just a sales and marketing commercialization and transition, because the same hearing aid would apply to either. Like, which is it, one or the other typically?
There's a few primary things that happen, and an example could be like a cart-based medical device, that's used in civilian settings, but you need to make that smaller, lower weight and lower power requirements for use in operational settings. And so what they call that, and also cost, lower cost. So C-swap, cost, size, weight, and power. You got to have an acronym for everything. So, but you can also innovate to add on AI assist to help the medics in a prolonged casualty care scenario.
Yeah.
You want to have the data transmitted from the device into whatever format that military unit requires, and then doing some cost effectiveness studies or cost utility, cost benefit studies to show that it really drives values, outcome measures, that the Department of Defense and federal entities can see. So those are some of the things that we help them do. We drive that, guide that innovation path.
So basically, it's rarely the case where it's an off-the-shelf product that works in both situations and you're just commercializing in one side or the other. It's usually, no. We have an extreme scenario that requires a different prototype and model that may or may not be commercially viable in the civilian side, because who's going to pay for an extreme version of it, right? But you're saying no, we want the super ding dong version of the carbon digulator. Go build it. Here's some money to go do it. That's kind of what you're describing.
Yes.
Okay. And then
go ahead.
When you raise the non-dilutive funding, it doesn't mean that there's a purchase order attached to it. They still have to earn the purchase order at the end of the day with that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Building it out towards sustainment so that it can be utilized within the military for a period of time, training. How do you go through that acquisition or procurement? Procurement is typically purchase of goods and services. Acquisition is more complex, like building a F-35 or something. But medical is getting more complex because you're adding in the AI assist, you're adding in the communication, you're adding in pieces, edge compute, digital twins. There's all kinds of things that the military is asking for so they can better support the medics, and medical personnel.
What was the acronym you said? You C-swap?
C-swap. So cost, size, weight, and power.
Cost, size,
and
weight, and power.
that's just a common innovation.
Well, it's a clear problem that's universal, that of like, hey, I need a C-swap version of this that is cheaper, lighter, C-swap, weight, and has longer battery life, so that if I can't find a plug wherever I am, then I need a extra whatever with it. And okay, so that makes sense. So you're looking for kind of C-swap opportunities at the extreme version of it. Like I'll give you my dumb examples, right? Like General Mills has a bar called Nature Valley, right? And in the bar category, it's like, it's crowded and this and that. But what they discovered was that it was an amazing extreme scenario bar. I don't know if Bree, your adventure friends like this or not, but like basically the bar is perfectly fine in the desert or in the Antarctic. Like it is fine, which may be a little scary, but it's fine to eat. It won't lose its structural integrity, and therefore, people who are kind of extreme sports or extreme hikers and packers like love the product for that situation, but it wasn't designed for that. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about, is like, how do you develop the extreme? And because like basically what you're describing is the military is the ultimate super consumer with the most extreme requirements. And if you can figure out what that use case is that has value in a C-swap situation, especially for a military countermeasure situation, then because the U.S. military is so committed to troop safety, they're going to fund it, and if it works, they're going to buy it. That's kind of the lane that you operate in. And then like help me understand, Dr. Eric, is like how much of what you do identifying like that civilian product, if done to the extreme in a C-swap situation, would have tremendous value, and you are convincing them to go up, hey, let's go get the non-dilutive funding and you devote resources to build it, versus people coming to you with, I think there's an application for this. Like how does it typically work?
Yeah, the last 14 years of doing this, it's predominantly been about 95% word of mouth up until this year. And then going to JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, we found about 80 technologies, and just talking to predominantly CEOs and saying, that is dual use an option for you, something that you're interested in, and then also with referrals from service provider companies, even venture capital, and some others that say we have a portfolio of companies. Can you help us discern which of these dual use opportunities are there critical gaps or
Okay.
funding
So
opportunities?
it goes both ways. You're approaching them and they're approaching you with that.
Yes.
And in the case that they're approaching you, how do they know that there's, because here's my concern, Dr. Eric, and you tell me if I should not be concerned about this or not, is that I don't know what the Venn diagram is of entrepreneurs who are also vets. So like some of them, I get it if there's an entrepreneur or a VC that has been a vet and they're like, oh, well, I know because I have personal experience. But my suspicion is that that's kind of small and that they're, not to cast aspersions, but that there might be some entrepreneurs and venture folks who are hungry for non-dilutive capital, and they're trying to force fit a square peg in a round hole and say, hey, Dr. Eric, I think this would work great in a countermeasure. And you're like, you've never been in the fog of war. I don't think that's actually the case. Like how much of it is like they are coming up with good ideas that have a legit thing versus, because I'm trying to figure out, like, there's clearly lots of tech that would have dual purpose, but it's a non-obvious insight because you have to have been on both sides of the arena to be able to know that. So like, how do you actually crack the code on that?
So we've interacted with about 1,500 companies in the last 14 years. And these are predominantly, small life science. And we've worked with 300 directly, so about 1 out of 5. And what we found, over the last year, it's probably gone up to about, it's gone down to about 1 out of 10 that we work with more companies coming towards us or being referred. So when you see a portfolio company that comes out of a portfolio, the key piece is the CEO being willing and strongly supporting that translation into dual use technology. So we're really seeking out CEO and teams that want to make this build for military operational medical settings. And you're right about the service providers and the portfolios. Unless the CEOs are on board, you're not going to start there. So that's how we typically start with the CEOs. And we have a dual use tech triage that we also evaluate, companies and then talk with the CEOs and see what their buy-in is.
Got it. And then so it sounds like it was, the data that you provided is interesting. 1,500 companies, 1 in 5, you got to a dual use. And then now you're saying the 1 in 10 refers to the inverse where they're coming to you, or what does the 1 in 10 refer to?
1 in 10 is having more marketing related companies coming to us. So a lot of exposure on LinkedIn this year. We've been posting a lot. Yeah. And so more companies coming through that way, but also conferences or, discussions that companies say, hey, I'd like to explore.
So it was traditionally you going to them. Now it's going both ways with that. And so.
Yeah, word of mouth prior, and then, now more kind of both ways and really evaluating how can we find that 1 in 10 CEO.
And then on that front, like let's have some fun with numbers here. Like, what is the size of prize of non-dilutive funding from the military? Like, how much money is, like, when you run into a VC, they're like, oh, I have $100 million, $1 billion under management, right? Like, what is the government's equivalent of that? Like, what's the size of their willingness to fund these types of things?
Yeah, it's billions. And so the congressionally directed medical research program, $1.27 billion per year. The Department of Defense and federal systems, it ranges of small business innovation research and other mechanisms can be comparable to NIH and even higher. So you're talking, 40 billion at NIH per year, and so it's a significant complement to NIH, funding that's out there. And a lot of companies just, when they look at it, they say, I don't know where to start in the DoD. They know where to start in NIH, but they don't know where to start and then how to efficiently navigate from initial funding to strategic follow-on. And that's where we help guide them through that process so that they can get in and keep going.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So the 1.27 billion, that's for, what was it again? It was DoD, no,
congressionally directed medical
research. Okay, and that's annually. The other chunk you said is as large as the NIH, which is about 40 billion, give or take, or so. And that's who allocates that?
So that's if it's Office of Secretary of Defense over DoD and other federal components, okay. And so DoD has the biggest SBIR pot of money out there.
SBIR is
Small Business Innovation Research.
Yeah. And so basically what you're telling me is that I think Andreessen Horowitz has 90 billion under management, that you're like, oh yeah, the DoD is in the ballpark of one of the largest VCs out there from a funding perspective with that. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So number one, those numbers are amazing and huge, right? Because like 90 billion is the total AUM. That's not what they deploy annually, which is what I'm hearing you say, is that it's 40 billion annually is deployed. Is that right? Okay. So that's a crazy number. And then when you secure, you make a match, right? So 1 in 5, it's a good fit, and then they're willing to do it, and the CEO is on board. And then either the DoD or the Congress is like, oh, this is great. Let's fund this medical research for military use cases. Like, I don't know how to phrase. The give to get is the government just wires you the money, and they expect what in return? So they're not equity, but what do they expect in return so that you're not taking advantage of them and stuff? So.
Yeah, you propose aims or objectives, and tied to those are specific milestones and deliverables. And so as long as you meet those milestones and deliverables, you'll receive the award tranches over time. And there's some new opportunities out there through consortia that are Office of Secretary of Defense sponsored and BARDA sponsored, that you can receive an initial funding award, and as you can have follow-on options that you can pursue non-competitively, or not having to go out and recompete again. So that's where that's the company that I mentioned around the every virus, or the host targeted antiviral. They started with 11.2, bumped up to 24, 36, and up to 50 without having to recompete.
That's amazing, because as you said, like usually as you go from a seed to Series A to B, that every step along the way is dilutive to the founders and the like. And you're saying you can raise the initial seed, and you can keep raising and still not dilute all along the way with this.
Correct.
And I mean, you tell me. I mean, you've been on both sides of things, right? Is that my buddies who are entrepreneurs who've raised money from venture or PE, sometimes they have colorful language about, how much of a hard ass they can be about, like, they're on the board and they have expectations, and you might have some 28-year-old kid who's never done anything but has a spreadsheet that says you were supposed to do blah 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 blah, right? Like, you tell me, is the government a bigger hard ass in terms of, I've given you this money and the objectives and aims on that? How do they compare versus like a traditional VC or private equity that is probably in your underwear if they've written you a check?
Yeah. So there's, what I found is the Navy, we're working on a dental AI solicitation that, was awarded in exactly 90 days from when we started writing it. And they've been fantastic to work with, as long as the milestones are met, and then ultimately the deliverables. So from pencil to paper to, over $1 million in 90 days is something that is, I think when VCs and other funding private raise, when they start hearing that you can do this, they're tuning in more. They're listening to it and saying, oh, maybe we can tie this into our de-risk our private raise with that as well.
Yeah. So it seems like they're, like, I don't know if your clients, your entrepreneur clients are like, you know what, I'd rather work with the government than some of the traditional investors, like, or is it it depends on who you get. Like, I don't know if it's clear one way or the other, or in your experience.
It's it's rare to go just on non-dilutive. There's just companies that will do a lot of the early science applied and basic and off of non-dilutive. But typically, as you start to scale and as you start to grow, having some of that dilutive is needed. And so, we typically look for seed Series A companies that have raised about 2 to 20 million, and those are ones that are far enough along,
Got it.
that they can show the government that they can commercialize in the private sector, which is a much bigger market cap, and they can also build dual use technology and be successful.
Okay, so this is great. I mean, you genuinely mean dual usage. Like, no. You can't just ask the government for a check without having any track record. Like, you want the government, well, it sounds like typically wants the private sector to say, okay, somebody else has said there's a there, and there's skin in the game, and that they've made progress, and now they want to piggyback after that due diligence has been done. It sounds like that's kind of the way that it runs. Is that
Yes,
about right there? Okay,
definitely. It shows stability of the company and a higher likelihood of survival.
And what would you say? I mean, if the normal, I mean, the kind of finger in the air math for a typical VC is that 1 out of 10 will skyrocket, the other 9 expect to fail. Like, what would you guess the government's track record is? Their version of that when they fund this kind of stuff is 1 out of 10 succeed. Is it less, more?
I think it's, they typically look at return on investment, the number of personnel, that are brought in, over time, how much money's raised, how much was made off the licensing. In a group called TechLink, they've done some really amazing studies to show quantitatively, what that investment returns. And so that's a good example, but it's very labor intensive to capture that information. But I think it's higher than, the 1 out of 10 or 85% or things that you
That's
see.
Great. That's great. Because, I mean, to your point, the model, that actually makes sense to me. If they're waiting for, they're patient to wait for a company that has some private market validation, and B, you have, I mean, not every investor is created equally. Like, there's an investor that can write a check, and there are investors that can write a check and bring customers and bring partners. And the military seems like it's unparalleled in terms of, like, no, you go build your version of, for the military, that C-swap in some way, shape, or form that's meaningful, and we'll give you connections to test it out in the Air Force or the Navy before they buy with it, so that you almost have kind of the built-in stage gates of, like, taking a product. Am I fairly describing it? Like, they're going to hook you up with parts of the military to make sure that this actually works before they actually try to sign a PO with it and stuff. So
and varying levels of support around that. So that's what we're really building, and we hope our goal, is to create kind of an operating system for CEOs around dual use technology. And, we start with applications, they see how we work, but we also build out core project R&D teams. We identify industry partners like the AI Assist or, manufacturers, regulatory, legal, vetted service providers. And we also help guide around the innovation. So we put all that together in a product layer, that we call Navigator. And so we build this out specifically for the CEOs to have that high level view of dual use technology and R&D, everything they're doing R&D in one location. So if they have a platform, they have many opportunities. How do you sort through it, and how do you track over time? And so starting with the applications is a typical place, but then as they get funding, they say, okay, let's dive deeper. Let's really start building this out. And we have a couple layers within Navigator. And that
Navigator is how do I describe? Is it like the Pirate Eddie bot? Is it something different than that? Like, what are we talking about? Navigator.
It is when we talk about an operating system, it's really kind of a no to low code build based off our expertise, experience, data, and so we customize it to create non-dilutive funding roadmaps.
So it's a piece of software. Like, help me understand what specifically it is. It's software that you sell licenses to, or is it come free gift with free purchase if they work with you? Like, how do I think about that?
We have a couple levels, but the first one is really focused on funding roadmaps and collaborations, like working with DoD investigators. And so then beyond that, we have the industry partnerships, and so we set up those that information, specifically for the company and the software, so they can go on there, and it's very intuitive to navigate through, almost like we say an operating system, to show this step, the next, Slack-like communication, being able to have everything there for both application build and.
So is it like the Category Design Academy and Mighty Networks, like all the content's there and you can go on there and navigate it? Mm-hmm. And then just so I'm super clear on it, like, is this an offering that you provide to only clients that you work with? Can somebody else who's not working with you access it? Like, how do I think about access to it?
At this time, it's typically 5 clients at a time, so we can really build out what they need. And we typically start with applications first, so they see how we work, and then we dive into further funding opportunities, because once they get funded, then that's a positive ROI, and we can keep building upon that into the next stages. So
so there's kind of 5 seats at any given time, which is cool, and then they get access to the software. And then how much of it is like again, this is my crude comparison, like in the academy, the all the content's there, it comes out a month at a time, and then we have jams twice a week, right? Like, so how many of the 5 clients are just jamming in the software, like, oh, this is great, I'm learning all this stuff, and they never talk to you, versus like, hey, Dr. Eric, I need your time. You're like, it's in the software, go look it up there. Like, what's the typical experience like for the 5 clients?
Yeah,
mix of both you and the software, or what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hybrid. So I like a rhythm of about connecting at least once a week. But if they want to jump on, then we've got my calendar on there, and they could jump on and connect with me anytime. Okay. And so going back and forth on the Slack, I really like, not that it's a Slack-like piece, but it's able to put in everything you're doing. We have tasks of who's working on what, and we have alerts on when things are coming up, due dates, and I could even show you in 2 minutes on here if you wanted to go there. But it's a very interactive, intuitive experience that we have a suggestion, and usually if they say, hey, Eric, put this on, within a day we'll have a capability that they're looking for, or a piece. So it's highly customized, and we continue to add in features. And with 2027, we're going to integrate, multiple automation agents. So, this is the next step, the iterations to pull in more pieces.
So there will be a Dr. Eric bot at some point.
Yeah, there will be, and there will be a. Curly is my co-founder, and so have a Curly bot for him, and then also a dual use triage bot. How do you for a company to come in and say, are we a candidate? Are we a good fit for the capability gaps the DoD is looking for, and then is our team on board, and other criteria.
That's amazing, because one presumes that if you have the Curly bot, the Dr. Eric bot, the dual use bot, that should. I could see you going one of a couple of ways with this. One is that would probably increase the value, and therefore you could charge more for it. That's kind of one. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine you could increase the scope from 5 at any given time to something higher than that, because I'm assuming you cap it artificially just because of bandwidth and quality control and this and that, right?
You got it. So that's why we jumped into the Techstars Accelerator in 2020, was to train military and medical veterans, docs, nurses, pharmacists, dentists, special op medics, to work with industry. And then the next iteration in 2027 is going to be training on the use of Navigator, so that they can work with industry directly. We support them on the back end. We help support their workflows and processes. And so we've trained 50 thus far at no cost to them, and 25 have started their own companies.
Wow.
Or augmented their own companies. And
these are military folks. This is different than the first audience that we talked about.
Correct.
military folks who want to be entrepreneurs. Is that right?
Yeah, they want to continue to serve, as they taper their clinical practice or they close their
Oh,
clinical
military
practice.
medical people who want us.
Yes,
More
yes.
Dr. Eric's in the waiting, right?
Yeah. Because, we've worked with 300 companies out of 30,000 smalls in the U.S. in the life science industry. There's 153,000 or more in all of life sciences, which are the mids and the large. But we're working with 1%. So there's no competition. It's like, yes, get out there and help mobilize this dual use technology to operational settings and then around the world is really the end state.
So, kind of mission one, if I were to articulate this, is help high growth, high potential, private med tech companies get non-dilutive funding to create the super ding dong version C-swap dual tech purpose use of which will A, help their businesses, but B, serve our troops, especially in a countermeasure situation or in an extreme one of like, hey, it's a chemical, attack, and you need something that's going to help our soldiers breathe, right? And so you got that angle of it. And then what you're also tapping into is we know and we believe the military and the veteran cohort is probably the greatest untapped resource of leadership and entrepreneurship in America. But then you've niched down further of the military medical people, the more Dr. Eric's that you see have a chance to bring forth, and that you're building your version of the category design academy called Navigator that right now is 5 seats at a time with all the content to walk people through how to get funding, how to navigate the DoD and congressional directed funds, but then also what do you call it, Techstars, which I assume will be a similar format where you have content that's on software and in-person training and doodads, and of which you've had 50 go through it and 25 started companies. I mean, that's an amazing track record.
Some amazing people that have because I can lean on my network from the DoD, but then when you have 50 personnel, their network is accessible, and it leads to an incredible relationship capital build, and that's what I really enjoy, and I really from a training and mentoring standpoint, that's a really fulfilling aspect of this, and I think from medical countermeasures, but almost most importantly right now is from the 4 years of the experience of Ukraine, 4 years plus. We haven't seen large scale combat operations, LSCO, like this since World War II. And ever since then, the U.S. has had air and land superiority in theater. So what's happening in Ukraine is prolonged casualty care, where casualties are on the ground near a point of injury for 72 hours. And I've seen 13 to 14 days because they can't move to a higher definitive level of care until there's an opening, that is safe for the medics and others. And so it's changing how we have to equip the medics far forward and the medical personnel. And that's why new technology, dual use is really needed.
So my mind is buzzing here. I didn't realize is the U.S. government, the military, and specifically the military medical community directly involved in the UK? Like I didn't realize. Like, you're not speaking hypothetically? Like you're actually talking about businesses that you work with that are serving the soldiers that are hurt there currently. Like I didn't realize there was that active participation or whatever it actually looks like.
Yeah, there was funding through one of the consortia that the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium, or MTech, that actually funded some Ukrainian trials and clinical trials to use technology. And I've communicated with a lawyer out of Ukraine that's been using technologies in that setting.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to do comparative assessments with some of the technologies that we have here and show, really in a real use case, unfortunately, of how those technologies perform. And I think that's critical to inform what is the best technology for us going forward as well.
Yes. Well, we discovered in our creator capitalist course that the greatest kind of economic value creation was in a business situation was a life quake situation. Something crazy happened, tragic happened, and in a turnaround situation. I mean, what you're basically describing is that same thing of like, at a much more grave scale of you know, a global quake, an organizational quake, a personal quake, where lives are at risk and health is, in dire situations. In a turnaround situation where the Ukrainians are, they've had their backs against the wall for a while now, and that, you of course wish that none of this was happening now. But basically, what I'm hearing you say is, since World War II, there's never been a greater incubator situation for great dual purpose tech to emerge, because the theater is right then and there. And so if you can build something that can serve, then you're going to find play there. And so like that's kind of remarkable, tragic, but remarkable to think about what the advancement opportunities are. And, I love, Dr. Eric, that you talked about, relationship capital, right? Because like ostensibly non-dilutive funding is financial capital that you're providing. That's kind of, anybody would want that on their cap table, just given what you're describing. But what you provide, either non-military, biotech firms who are, entering dual purpose, or the tech stars, military medical people who want to become entrepreneurs, what you're providing, financial capital, relationship capital, like, okay, let me help you navigate the labyrinth that is probably the military and funding and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, reputation capital, right, is like, hey, not only can, if you build it, I will find you the right kind of super consumer, as it were, which is what sort of frontline person in what branch of the military and in what theater has the greatest use case for this. So you go test, and they'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of your product. And the fourth one is intellectual capital, which is CSWAP at some level of like, look, you can kind of reinvent the wheel, but you've probably been around the block long enough to say, there are ways to make it way less. There are ways to make the battery life extend that are portable from one tech to the other with that. And so like, from the four capital standpoint, like that's effectively what I'm hearing you deliver.
Yeah.
Is way more than financial capital. It's all of the four capitals at the same time.
Yeah. And I think with the intellectual capital is just helping build that product layer, the tools to take that prototype, from idea to end user driven product. And that's what it's all about, to have measurable outcomes and metrics such as human performance optimization, decreasing the time to return to duty, and then or reducing aeromedical evacuations from theater. Those are things that these technologies can do. And how do we help you to get there faster? How do we make it tailored to the end user, meaning the medics and the personnel, but most importantly the warfighters, what their needs are, and helping them in a way to do that. And the more that we can do that internationally, through other foreign military services in Ukraine, the better, because they have a lot of great technologies, and we worked with many international companies to bring their technologies to the U.S. as well.
Yes. Well, and you never want to let a good, you don't wish for crisis, but if you have crisis, you don't want to let it go to waste. And the opportunity to build out breakthrough. I mean, my suspicion is that you could trace most major breakthroughs back to the military, back in the theater of war, and that kind of context for advancement. And so, I mean, that's incredible that you're doing all of that. I have a personal ask for you, Dr. Eric, is one of my kids is thinking about med school and the like and stuff. And, he's an 18-year-old kid, so, who knows what will happen and stuff. But what would be your words of wisdom to the next generation of folk who are like, I might want to do biotech, I might want to go to become a physician, and knowing what you know now, like, what would you tell them of like, hey, this is a path that I chose, and why is it different and might be of interest to folk?
Yeah, a little side story with that is that my grandfather found a story in the Sunday Oregonian Parade magazine, and it was about Uniformed Services University. I didn't know it existed, and at the time I was rolling through 12 different applications for medical school. This was the 13th, and so I submitted and got accepted, and also got accepted to Oregon Health and Science University. My path was I was going to be a neonatal intensive care unit doc and live in Oregon because I love Oregon. And but when I sat down and talked to my father about it, I just said, I can travel the world and I can get school paid for and do something that's incredibly unique. So it's like, wow, no question. And so, we made that happen, and no regrets at all. It's just been a fun journey. And I'm a military medical ambassador for Uniformed Services University, and nothing but amazing things, that they do there. The staff is incredible. So if you want a focused, education about everything that's medical students, but they have nurses, PhDs, and all kinds of programs there that really get you into a tribe. The military is really a unique tribe and something you're loyal to your entire life. So it's like, it's very different than a typical medical career, but so rewarding in so many ways. Yeah. So if, I had a bug to travel. So, that was another factor. So being able to see the world. I spent a year in Korea, 6 months in Hungary, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, all over Europe. You can't do that. Spent a week on a paddle wheeler in Brazil, looking at parasites and parasite burden, and tropical diseases. It's just flying, it's just a career that I never imagined, especially through medicine.
Well, it's so extraordinary, and you are an amazing creator capitalist, and we're so grateful that there are Dr. Erics on the front line, serving as a physician, as a military vet, but also as an entrepreneur that is fostering other entrepreneurs. So, many blessings to the Dr. Eric Digital Bot and the Dr. Curly, or your Curly Bot and the Dual Tech Bot. Can you help folks know how to find you if they think, hey, I might need Dr. Eric's time, or Techstars?
Yeah.
How would they find you?
Yeah, I think the LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me, Eric Hansen, MD, MPH, and then Eric at Milmed Connect, so ERIC at MILMEDCONNECT.com. And be happy to talk with anyone about their technologies, or if you're interested in medical school, be happy to talk to your son. And those are fun conversations. So we're always open to chatting.
Great. I did forget to ask you one last question, and let me know if there's anything else. Is what was your experience like with the Academy? Obviously, you were, a different, one of one in the space there, but I'm kind of curious. We just wrapped up, the third cohort. What was your experience? What'd you think of
it? My journey in the category design just started off of LinkedIn, going to the Substack subscription and all the mini books. Just, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is really, I'd love to learn this. I'd love to learn how to implement this, or just understand it first. And so slow progression. And then when I heard about the category design, I was like, wow, I get to talk to Eddie, Christopher, and Bree. It's like, yeah, I'm in. And then I get to talk, unlimited discussions with Eddie and Christopher bots and the AI agent. And, I haven't done nearly enough with that. So I'm going to continue to refine, through that. But it's just a wonderful tool and collection of information that has been fantastic. And now with the Creator Capitalist book, it just, everything in one location, which is really nice. But one of the great things that I've been doing with my oldest son, he's going to be a junior in college, and he's going to do applied AI in business, and is reading the book with him. And then my youngest son, who's going to be a freshman in college, coming up here, the same thing. And it's integral to their existence, AI, and learning how to harness that and optimize that. And I think that book does a fantastic job of explaining it to anybody that's working around category design, but also just working in industry.
Well, among your many, many lists of accomplishments, I'll add you're a good dad, my friend, because not every son wants to read a book with their dad and the like. And so I'm like, how do I get my kids to do that?
Yeah, I know.
They're
I
probably
probably
like, whatever, Dad.
I do talk a little too much about AI, but they are
That
listening
sounds
and
familiar.
reading.
I do. I might have been accused of that from time to time.
That's good.
So, wow. I'm so grateful for the time. Thank you for giving us a chance to kind of see into your journey, Dr. Eric, and please let us know whatever we can do to support. We are happy to do that. We're super psyched that you'll be with Pirate Christopher at MilitaryCon, and
Yes.
can't wait to hear what that conversation transpires. You never know with Christopher; it'll always be interesting. So,
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. So really great to do that. And as you as you look at the military and all the things that you're doing with the military around category design, anything I can do to be a part of that or help or assist in any way, definitely.
thank you, brother. Awesome.
No, thank you so much for having me.